now
on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
6:06 now as this Friday morning keeps chugging along. Thanks for being part of our ride. Well, thanks for letting us be a part of your ride this morning. At 6:35, Steve Knotts, chairman of the Republican County in Fairfax. We've got a big rally this Sunday. 7:05, Fred Flight, vice chair of America First Policy Institute, about this plan to get back 5 Americans in a prisoner exchange. And then, of course, revive the Iran nuclear deal, because that's what we need right now. Too many of our enemies have it nice and easy out there, Patrice. Let's let Iran get some nukes.
That's Joe Biden's strategy, at least.
7:35, Steve Moore, economists, talk about the inflation situation. 8:05, Kash Patel, former federal prosecutor on the Trump indictments and the Biden family. And then 8:35, Ken Cuccinelli will be joining us. That's all coming up. I'm Larry Conner. That's Patrice Onwuka. You hear chiming in there.
I'm vibing this morning. I guess it's a Friday, Larry.
Good, as well you should. Let's get a recap of some of the things that we have learned this week in particular about the Biden family corruption. Of course, we've been covering quite a bit the document revealed by the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, James Comer, that shows upwards to $20 million from countries like Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, China, other nefarious nations. You know, I've been making the point that he didn't make money from, Finland and Australia and Canada doing business with them. It was other countries that are seedy, to say the least, if not outright corrupt, if not outright enemies of our nation. Mercedes Schlatt the other day pointed out to me, though, yeah, that's true, but guess where else he wasn't making money from? From American companies, from American interests.
That's true.
Hunter Biden puts out his shingle and says, hey, it's time to get rich because my dad is vice president. And he doesn't look to help Americans who are wanting favorable treatment from the federal government. No, he looks overseas and most specifically to the most nefarious actors on the world stage.
When you do stuff in the dark, you look for people who also operate in the shadows. And American companies are not saints, but I think the scrutiny would have been higher here than in other countries.
Yeah, well, you would think, except this is the family of the vice president of the United States. Here's the thing about being vice president. You know what your job is as vice president? You don't really have a job. I mean, theoretically, you serve as the president pro tem of the United States Senate. But that job is largely ceremonial. You swear people into office at election time. You gavel in the first opening session. And then you're only called upon if there's a tiebreaker vote and your vote is needed in the Senate. Otherwise, you literally don't have a job. And so Joe Biden, for 8 years, was pretty much able to just float around this town and, do ceremonial things that Barack Obama tasked him to do because Obama didn't want to do it. Famously, Obama never even invited Joe to the White House residence the entire 8 years.
Really?
He served as vice president. Joe Biden was never once invited for dinner or a meal or even coffee or tea in the president's residence upstairs at the White House.
Wasn't Snoop Dogg smoking marijuana there? I mean,
allegedly.
Allegedly. Okay.
So Biden's able to just sort of do his thing. This is after 40 years in the Senate, of course. And he's pretty much under the radar because nobody gives him any attention. Nobody takes him seriously. And also because it was a Democrat administration, nobody cared to look at what Joe Biden was doing. So now we're finding out. Now, normally, when a man decides to run for president, there's what's called a vetting process. And, of course, we don't have an actual vetting process. Like, if you go to get a job in the federal government, if you go to get hired by a major corporation in a critical position, those companies or the federal government itself has a vetting apparatus where they look at your social media history. They look at things that you've done. They look at relationships you've had. They've looked at other companies you've worked for, and they find out if there's any skeletons in your closet. You can't get a job in the federal government at certain levels without having that vetting process. But for elected office, There is no official vetting process. We rely on the news media, Patrice Onwuka. We rely on reporters and journalists to do that vetting. And forget about no vetting of Barack Obama. Look at the things we've learned about Barack Obama after he was president. There was certainly no vetting process of Joe Biden. The conventional wisdom in this town was, oh, Joe, good old Joe, he's been around forever. We know him. Yeah, he's not. Oh, sure, he had that faulty presidential campaign where he lied all the time and plagiarized, but that was back in the 80s. He's just Joe Biden. Well, no. This is what should have been vetted when he ran for president, the things that we're learning now. And
Absolutely.
The work that the Oversight Committee has done, especially this week, uncovering not only the $20 million in foreign cash that went to the shell corporations that the Biden family set up, but specifically things like Joe Biden going to dinner with Kazakh oligarchs who then wired $142,000 to Hunter Biden to pay for his new Porsche. Or the Russian woman who was the widow of a Moscow mayor who paid $3 million plus to Hunter Biden shell companies. And then, ta-da, she gets to sit and have dinner with Joe Biden at a private affair. I'm sorry, Patrice, do you ever get to have dinner with the Vice President of the United States? How many American citizens get to dine with the Vice President of the United States?
Not many. I think a smart vice president who wants to clean up their image would invite random Americans across the country to come and dine with the president. But that's not what happened. Now, I think you're right to point out that these new releases of information about all of the money that the Bidens were shaking down or raking in, whatever you want to call it, and hiding through these shell companies is appalling. But I think what's even worse is the response from the Democrats. So you have Democrats here pushing back on these new releases saying that there's no evidence that Joe Biden really received any of the money. They're saying once again, congressional Republicans have released information that did not involve the president. They're just rehashing the same Hunter Biden business dealings from at least 3 years ago. That's what our local Jamie Raskin oversight Democrat said.
That's the new standard.
Well, so they keep
just
moving
so you know,
the goalpost.
Just so you know, when the FBI investigates a corrupt mob boss or a crime family or organized crime and mafia of any kind, they don't look for a direct payment to the head of the crime family. You don't need that. All you need to do is show all the money flowing in and out of the crime family organization. That's what we've got here. It's not a crime only if you can see a direct cash payment to the head of the family.
Because Joe Biden.
Yeah, they always
payable
protect
to
the
Joe
head of the
Biden.
family. Yes.
But you see, my point is that Democrats are obviously going to continue to move the goalpost. It was enough to say before, oh, Joe Biden didn't know what was going on. This was just Hunter's dealings. When they were willing to acknowledge that the laptop was actually true and everything that on the laptop belonged to Hunter Biden, then it's just Hunter Biden's deal. Then Joe Biden didn't know about it. Then, this is now they're saying, well, there's no direct evidence. There's no check that says make payable to Joe Biden.
That's
right.
right.
Obviously we need and now it's we've known about this for a long time.
Of course. There's nothing new here. Nothing new here at all. Okay, well there is stuff new here, and in a moment you're gonna hear some audio, an exchange yesterday with John Kirby from the White House with Martha McCallum. I want you to hear that. And we also want to explore this. You remember this exchange with Peter Doocy that we talked about yesterday with Peter Doocy.
There's this testimony now where one of your son's former business associates is claiming that you were on speakerphone a lot with them talking business. Is that what?
Never talk business to anybody. And I knew you'd have a lousy question.
Well, why is that a lousy question?
Because it's not true.
Yeah, there you go. Well, what happened, what's most important to the Biden corruption scandal here and what could lead to his impeachment, what's most important here is not necessarily that exchange, but what happened right afterwards. And we're going to tell you about that and more as the walls do close in on the Biden presidency. That's all coming up in a moment. But first, and literally just in a moment.
Your favorite WMAL shows when you want them. Download the new WMAL app and listen on demand.
And I knew you'd have a lousy question.
Well, why is that a lousy question?
Yeah, that was a great moment with Peter Doocy, who we had on the program yesterday. Go ahead and download the podcast, listen to that interview from yesterday's show. So Peter Doocy has now subsequently revealed that when he got to his car after that exchange with President Biden, White House staffers were calling him, berating him, and correcting him, saying, you got it wrong, you got it wrong. Devin Archer never testified that Joe Biden talked about business when he was on the speakerphone. So the White House is now intervening and trying to clean up the Biden story here. Now, Jonathan Turley, law professor at George Washington, who's been looking at this stuff with a pretty clear eye, he says that could be a major, major problem for Joe Biden moving forward, Patrice. Because, listen, we've been covering this quite a bit. Whenever Karine Jean-Pierre is asked anything about Hunter Biden, Devin Archer, and all of the things that the Oversight Committee is looking into, what is her answer every single time?
Oh, I thought we had audio. I'm not going to speak to that on this here, or direct that to someone else.
Exactly.
I'm not going to speak to that.
That's what she says every time.
Exactly.
Everything. I won't say it. No comment.
Question.
Yeah, I refer your question to the counsel's office. I refer your question to the Justice Department. Refer your counsel to this.
She doesn't answer.
But I'm not going to
answer.
I'm not going to respond. I'm not going to respond. I'm not going to respond. Now suddenly the comms team is calling reporters to correct the record and to peddle the Biden line here.
Which is that's absolutely a departure. And you know what? Interestingly, they use other surrogates. They use Democrats in the House to do their dirty work, to answer these questions. So this is a big departure.
Using White House staff to repeat Joe Biden's position on these things, as Jonathan Turley says, could magnify problems for Biden. Because if it turns out that that's not true, which it certainly seems like it's not, now the White House staff has been used to obstruct the truth from coming out. Ooh. They're now part of the cover-up. They are now open for subpoena. Oh, okay. So the White House comm staff is calling reporters to peddle Joe Biden's story about Hunter Biden. So you had meetings about this? Did you have conversations? Who told you this? Did this come from the president? Did it come from his lawyers? Did it come from the White House counsel's office? Oh, so the White House counsel's office is now being used to peddle the. You see how this goes. This is how scandals start to grow in this town. So that's a very significant development.
But that signals that there is some slack in their office. Either they are just freaking out about Peter Doocy asking a very legitimate question and trying to clamp down on any sort of response, or they're just I think there's no other or.
That's exactly.
They are freaking out.
And here's another example of it. This is Martha McCallum yesterday interviewing John Kirby, who again is part of the White House staff, not part of the White House counsel's office. He's the spokesperson for the National Security Council, in fact, and he certainly isn't one of Joe Biden's private lawyers. And listen to him as an official member of the Biden administration.
The president said, I never talked business to anybody. But Devin Archer testified that the point of putting the speakerphone down at those meetings, which is what Peter was asking about, was just to demonstrate access, that Hunter had access to the then vice president and to sell the Biden brand. So what do you say about that, John? And when will the president actually answer some of these questions to put some of this to rest himself?
Oh, my goodness, Martha. I mean, he just did with Peter. I mean, he's the one who called Peter over and had Peter, risk life and limb cutting across that barrier. I mean, he specifically called Peter over. And he, look, he knows Peter. He knows Peter's not going to ask some softball question about how his vacation was. He knows.
I do love that he's trying to give Biden credit for saying Peter Doocy asked a lousy question.
While he slams the rest of the White House pool.
This is hubris.
Who Peter is, and he answered that question. And I don't know what.
He didn't answer whether or not he was on speakerphone in those meetings, John. He just said, I never talked business to anybody.
The question was about business, and he answered it consistently with what he said so many times before. He's been very consistent that he wasn't talking business.
But the question is, was he allowing his presence, on speakerphone to speak volumes? Was he allowing that presence to say, this is my son, he has access to me, while he's talking to Ukrainian businessmen, Chinese businessmen, Russian businessmen, after the invasion of Crimea, as Katie Pavlich just pointed out?
I just don't know how many times he's going to have to say no to the same question. And he said it consistently.
All right, so the point here is this is message coordination. And the question is, who's coordinating the message? And if it's coming from the president and his team, or if he's utilizing the staff to come up with this, then that means he is utilizing federal employees and White House employees to help with his cover story. And that expands this investigation quite a bit. It's no longer Joe Biden's personal family business. He's now utilizing White House staff to help magnify his excuses. And again, I love you, Martha McCallum, but the question here is, was Joe Biden unaware that he was aiding his son's business ventures here? And if he was unaware, how is that possible? Because is he stupid? Did he not know what business his son was in? Did he not know that by being on the phone? That's the question. And I would love to hear John Kirby's answer, sadly.
Now on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
Good Friday morning to you at 6:36, this 11th day of August. Thanks for joining us on a super busy morning, and we're going to get you moving along here where you need to go so you're informed on everything you care about. At 7:05, Fred Fleitz is going to join us. Apparently, the Biden administration looking to revive the Iran nuclear deal. It involves the release of 5 American prisoners being held in that country, and we'll talk about it coming up at 7:05. 7:35, Steve Moore, economist from Heritage, talk about the inflation issues right now. 8:05, Kash Patel, former federal prosecutor, about the indictments of Donald Trump and the schedule for the court dates. Fascinating how it aligns with the presidential election. And then at 8:35, Keg Cuccinelli will be joining us. Talk about the border and also about his man. He's now officially part of the DeSantis team, so we'll tell you all about that. That's coming up. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Patrice Onwuka. Good morning, Patrice.
Hey, good morning, Larry.
You know, Patrice, I'm no politician. I've never run for elected office, nor will I ever run for elected office, even though Mercedes Schlepp always teases me about it. It's not going to happen. I don't know a whole lot about winning elections. That said, if I were a Republican running for the House of Delegates or for the state Senate or for any position right now in the Commonwealth of Virginia for this November's election, every single speech, rally, conversation, and challenge to my Democrat opponent would focus primarily, or at least at the beginning part, on the idea that Democrats in Richmond wanted to separate parents from their children if they didn't support their child's desire to transition their gender. In fact, they wanted to make it the law that parents were actually abusers if they did it. But more than that, much more than that, we had Sage's bill make its way through Richmond. Sage's bill would have made it illegal for Virginia schools to keep secrets from parents, secrets of a sexual nature from parents. This bill was designed to protect children from exploitation, as the namesake of the bill, Sage, had to suffer because the parents were not brought in by the school system about her gender issues. Democrats defeated that. As far as I'm concerned, every single Republican running should make that the primary issue. Where do you stand on Sage's law? Where do you stand on government teachers keeping sexual secrets with children from their parents? And that brings us to our next guest, Steve Knotts. He's the chairman of the Republican Party in Fairfax County. There is a rally planned centered around parents' rights this Sunday in Fairfax County. Mr. Knotts, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and I appreciate the time today.
Steve Knotts, it appears to me we're always looking for that issue that transcends party line. That thing's like, what Democrats, Fairfax County, they're always going to vote for a Democrat. Well, if voting for a Democrat means that you're voting for parents not having a right in how their children are being raised and taught in public schools, maybe this is the issue, Steve.
Oh, this is definitely the issue because it transcends any of the political stuff, because now we're to the point that the left has gone so far away from what the mainstream parent in Fairfax County is interested in that it just boggles the mind that it's still, people voting for Democrats over and over and over again. So we're trying to get the word out that we're standing up for parents, and we're going to be there for the parents and the kids, and we're going to push excellence in education. And that's really what it comes down to, is we have to get our guys elected across the county and across the state in order to make real changes to the attack that's been on parents for the last 8-10 years.
Well, Steve, that sounds great. So for this rally, for folks who come out on Sunday, what can they expect at the rally?
Well, we have the chair of the Republican Party of Virginia, Rich Anderson's going to be there. The 11th District Chair, Mike Ginsburg's going to be there. We have a couple of excellent speakers coming that are going to be there to talk about parents' rights specifically. And we're all out there to support a fantastic candidate in Virginia's 9th House of Delegates, which is very, very winnable. We've got to get out there and support these guys and really get parents on board. We're not just looking at transgender rights. We're looking at drops in test scores. We're looking at separation from the parents and involvement with curriculum. We're looking at a lot of things that are really the left trying to put the state in the place of the parent, and we're going to stand up against that and really go after them in Fairfax County coming in November.
So, I mean, it's safe to say that, to put the election message succinctly, a vote for a Democrat is a vote for continuing to keep parents out of the discussion for their children's education. That's really where it stands at this point.
Exactly. They want to replace the parent with the state. They want to indoctrinate these kids to be nice little check-the-box Democrat voters going forward. It's about power. It's not about discrimination. It's not about bigotry or bullying or anything else. It's about Democrat power, and that's what we've got to break.
Well, and so what are the Democrats in some of these races talking about? How are they even defending the pushback that they're giving to some of the new rules in the state around schools and the policies for transgenderism, whether it's in the bathrooms or in parental notification? What's the left's pushback right now?
The way they keep spinning things is, looking out for the individual student who has issues, which we should do. We should protect people and respect people and give them the best education possible. But it's taking the stance that parents don't matter in that conversation. And that's what we really want to change, is it's a conversation between parents, students, and school systems. It's not the school system deciding what's right for everybody and pushing it down everyone's throat. So we've got to stand up. We've got to push back. And this rally on Sunday is the perfect way to do that. Come out, stand with us in solidarity, support these candidates, and you might even find a free pizza if you come out and get there early enough.
All right, you had me at the pizza. Lead with the pizza. Always lead with the pizza, Knots. This is incredibly important because I remember a couple of election cycles ago when we were really pushing to try to flip some of these seats in Richmond, and the next, we had some districts, Steve Knots, specifically in Fairfax, where there wasn't even a Republican nominee. And I remember you came in, you promised, listen, we are going to have candidates. We are going to have an option. We're going to offer an alternative. Not only that, but you're leading now in terms of leading with these issues and having rallies, yes, in Fairfax. Give us the details real fast so people can get out there.
Okay, it's at the Greenbrier Community Center in Chantilly. The information will be on our calendar at fairfaxgop.org. The candidate, fantastic candidate, it's Non-Win, and his name's spelled Huynh if you want to find him online. Single parent of 3, Fairfax County Schools. Excellent guy.
Great guy, running for the 9th Delegate District. He's a Vietnamese American. I've met him. He's a great guy.
Yeah, he's going to be there. We're going to be there to support him. It's going to run from 6:30 to about 8:30. We're hoping to get a really good turnout. It's not too far off of Route 50, just west of West Ox Road near Fair Oaks Mall. Just come on out, hang out a few minutes. Just let everybody know that you're there. You're standing in solidarity with parents. And we're going to push hard, and we're going to win seats in Fairfax County this fall, and I'm excited about that. Absolutely. That's what I've been working towards for the last 4 years, and we're going to pull it off this year. Thank you, Steve.
This is the way to do it. Yeah. And Glenn Youngkin won the state with this message, and we got to get him a majority in both chambers so that he can actually finish his agenda. Thank you, Steve Knotts, chairman of the Republican Party in Fairfax. Hey, if you have a financial advisor, if you ever 6:49 now, it's O'Connor and Company chugging along here, and a lot of people talking about this debate that's coming up in, 11
Less than
days?
2 weeks.
12 days? Yeah, Wednesday the 23rd. There's a couple of things to update you on. The first is this concern over a pledge. All of the candidates have been asked to sign a pledge that they will support the Republican nominee. Donald Trump is hedging on that.
I mean, I have a problem with the debate for another reason. I wouldn't sign the pledge. Why would I sign a pledge? There are people on there that I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have certain people as, somebody that I'd endorse. So they want you to sign a pledge. But I can name 3 or 4 people that I wouldn't support for president.
Now, this is interesting because in 2016, there was a concern about a pledge. They wanted everybody to sign a pledge. But really, the pledge was designed to targeting Donald Trump because everyone was worried that if he didn't get the nomination, he would run as an independent, right?
Yeah.
And back then, Trump was like, "Yeah, I'll sign the pledge, of course, because I'm going to win." But see, what ended up, and I can understand Trump's reluctance to sign this pledge now because it means nothing. Because they all signed the pledge, and then look what happened. John Kasich, who signed the pledge, he didn't support Donald Trump. He actively worked against him. Jeb Bush, same thing. Ted Cruz, who ended up supporting him in the long run, but you'll remember at the Republican National Convention, supporters of Ted Cruz actually staged a floor fight to try to wrestle the nomination away from Donald Trump.
I remember that.
So, I mean, what's the point of the pledge?
Well, and now you already have Chris Christie saying he would never support Donald Trump. Like, he would actively work and oppose him. And some of these others, Asa Hutchinson, I mean, a number of folks have not signed the pledge. I believe right now it's only Ron DeSantis, Vivek Ramaswamy, and now today Nikki Haley. So a lot of those folks, they're not signing the pledge. I mean, Will Hurt is, you can ignore him and some of these other smaller names. But I think it wouldn't surprise me if the RNC decides to drop the pledge just so that they can get Trump onto the debate stage.
It's funny, though, in 2016, the pledge was, the pledge basically was, Donald Trump, you better support the nominee and not go independent. Now, if you think about it, the pledge really means, hey, the rest of you better support Trump when he wins the nomination.
That's exactly what the translation is.
We have another development that is very disturbing, and hopefully this will be fixed immediately. Fox News has put out guidelines on how media outlets outside of the Fox universe can use video and sound from this debate. They said, and it reminds you of how the Super Bowl controls the content that they put out. Apparently, media outlets are only allowed to use up to 3 total minutes of the debate on their broadcasts, and they can never use any of the audio after a 7-day window. Imagine us on this show. That would handcuff us. We use this audio all the time. I mean, you're telling me that 2 months from now I can't go back and remind you what Vivek Ramaswamy said at the August 23rd debate, and that would be violating Fox News' broadcast rules?
That is an example of speech suppression. I mean, listen, and censorship. I would think Fox would want the clips to go far and wide, to be used often to remind folks that Fox had the exclusive first Republican.
It's outrageous.
Presidential debate. So,
by the way, Fox News doesn't follow these rules. They show you clips from other news outlets from months ago, and it's outrageous. Kudos to our friend Chris DeGaulle, who found this in the media guidelines and pointed this out on social media. And Ronna Romney McDaniel, the chairwoman of the RNC, fix this now. These are the Republican debates, not the Fox News debates. It's 6:52, and I want to tell you about my friends at Closet